Mega worldwide. It's now
Right.
time for the happy ending.
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo! I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay!
Yay.
Hooray!
I would like to say, for the record, that we breeze past some of the wins so quickly in a bum rush to the next loss
Yeah.
because of the addiction to the dopamine adrenaline cocktail that is I'd rather be right than happy or
Ugh.
honest, right? And the idea that fear is intoxicating, because as human beings we have survived by paying attention to things that we fear with greater intensity than pleasure.
It's evolution, baby.
Yep, that's right. And you
That's
can
why we're
recognize
here.
it.
That's why we're anxious.
That's right. And that's why you need to manage it as a part of being a civilized being, unless, you're clamoring for the days of when we were all in the trees. But let's just say, for the record, Monday, this week, remember, this was just Monday, Biden signed into law the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, which includes in it $550 billion of new federal investments in infrastructure over 5 years, touching everything from bridges to roads to the nation's broadband, water, and energy systems. Experts say the money is sorely needed to ensure safe travel, as well as the efficient transport of goods and produce across the country. The nation's infrastructure system earned a C- from the American Society of Civil Engineers earlier this year. Democrats claim the legislation pays for itself through a multitude of measures without raising taxes, but the CBO brushed aside several of those pay-for provisions, ultimately finding the package would add $256 to the deficit over 10 years. It's significantly smaller than the $2.25 trillion. By the way, that $256 billion that it will add to the deficit, allegedly, CBO, allegedly, does not factor in the billions in lost productivity from the bridges that don't work and that get stuck when boats have to go underneath them, or trains that derail, and the lives that are saved when you fix those kind of things, or the ability for people who no longer have a landline to be able to call for help in a circumstance because there's broadband and Wi-Fi around. Those kind of advances, those life-saving aspects of it, you cannot put a price tag on them. So, but I'll stick to that in there. Legislation calls for $110 billion for roads, bridges, and major infrastructure projects. By the way, these are grants or matching loans, which will double or triple the money that's going into each of these projects if they don't pay for it outright. That includes $40 billion for bridge repair, replacement, and rehabilitation, according to the text. The White House said that would be the single largest dedicated bridge investment since the construction of the interstate highway, which started in the 1950s. The deal also contains $16 billion for major projects that would be too large or complex for traditional funding programs, according to the White House. Some 20%, or 173,000 miles of the nation's highways and major roads, are in poor condition, as are 45,000 bridges. This is going to fix 45,000 bridges and 173,000 miles of road that is in poor condition. Not average, not it could be better. Poor, as in dangerous. Also in the package, $11 billion for transportation safety, including a program to help states and localities reduce crashes and fatalities, especially of cyclists and pedestrians. That's right, kids. Bike lanes are going to get their own pylons and get their own safety measures, which they couldn't afford to put in a lot of cities as they try to increase pedaling and walking traffic in major cities, which has an effect on climate, but nobody would call that a climate part of the bill, but it absolutely does. Think of the associated climate assistance that comes from making it safer for people to walk and bike to work. that, or hoverboard, or ride one of those wheels with the two little planks on it that you can do it, or that weird one that looks like a skateboard with a giant,
Yeah.
go-kart tire in the middle of it. $1 billion to reconnect communities, mainly disproportionately black neighborhoods that were divided by highways and other infrastructure. According to the White House, it will fund planning, design, demolition, and reconstruction of street grids, parks, and other infrastructure in areas where they were moved because of a highway at the time. Let me reset $1 billion just for that.
Right on.
Yeah. That's parks. That's new retail investment in areas. That's also improves the health and welfare of the people in those areas, because they will dig up a bunch of ground that had lead and other crap in it as well. Get rid of it, because they'll treat those things like Superfund sites as they do these things, because that's the law. Always has been. Since the mid-'70s. The package provides $39 billion to modernize public transit. That's less than the $85 billion that Biden wanted, but again, these will match funds. Cities will be able to double the investment through bond issuance and other stuff like that, especially if they're bigger cities with a lot more money, like LA, Chicago, New York, Seattle, and the like, Baltimore, Miami, places like that. The largest, $12 billion in partnership grants for intercity rail service, including high-speed rail, which, by the way, you'll recall that it was going to be somewhere like $8 billion to create a high-speed rail from Seattle to Los Angeles. $8 billion. And the reason we never did that in California was because the matching funds from the state weren't there, and the money from the Trump administration was earmarked for other stuff, and that they had to agree to a bunch of other stuff to get it, and they weren't, Newsom wasn't, nor Oregon and Washington State weren't willing to do it either. Now this is just free and clear from that stuff. Upgrading airports, waterways, and ports. $17 billion in port infrastructure. $25 billion in airports to address repair and maintenance backlogs, reduce congestion and emissions near ports and airports, reducing emissions near airports. And again, this is climate related. Is this going to be listed as the things that are pro-climate in the bill necessarily? No, just standard pollution. Something that everyone can understand, but will ultimately have a positive impact on the climate. Improving power and water systems. $65 billion to rebuild the electric grid. According to the White House, it calls for building thousands of miles of new power lines and expanding renewable energy. $55 billion to upgrade water infrastructure. According to the text, it will replace lead service lines and pipes so that communities have access to clean drinking water. Another $50 billion will go towards making the system more resilient, protecting it from drought, floods, and cyber attacks. $21 billion to clean up Superfund and brownfield sites, reclaim abandoned mines, land, and cap orphaned gas wells. Do you remember when Biden brought that up during the debates, and he rattled off from memory the number of them? It's like it was like 168,000 or something uncapped well tanks and like that kind of.
No,
like
I don't remember that. That's crazy.
Like 16,000. I think it was somewhere in the order of 60,000. He could tell you. He knows the number.
Yeah.
I don't. He rattled it off in the middle of it, and everybody was going, was that on anybody's major list? Because that's where a lot of methane comes from that seeps into the environment. Capping those wells would solve that, because the earth will naturally reclaim it as it seeps through, as opposed to coming out through a chimney basically out of the earth that we created. And those are union jobs. And did anybody else, did Trump bring that up ever? Did anybody else, even in the climate world, even in the climate argument, have you heard anybody talk about capping wells the way Biden did, where he brought it up and said, this is something we got to do? It's a huge impact on the environment. And it just happens. It's like oil leaks that happen all the time. And you're just like, well, I guess that's just life, right? It was so consistent, and nobody cared so much that the average person didn't know that was something that they should be rooting for.
Right.
And that was in the bill this week. That happened. Those union jobs, those safety jobs, that climate advancement happened in the United States because of a bill Joe Biden pushed through, a detail he and his team intentionally added because they thought it had importance and had believed in its importance for a long time. They got it done. The money is going to be spent on that thing. That alone, honestly, you stand alone, think about that for a second. All the uncapped wells that puke methane into the air and that affect climate in this country, that are material, there are a genuine percentage of the amount of pollution that comes from the United States, like a measurable amount, a statistically significant amount that would change the quotient they would grade global warming on, or the rise of world temperature over time. That changed this week. That is a bill by itself would be a major win. That would be enormous. And it passed in a package of dozens of other things that will save lives, improve the lives of every American, make businesses more productive and safer when they carry out their work, save truckers as they drive everywhere they're going, save small businesses that are trying to get their products to market. Allow for safer and cleaner commutes. Don't let anything that happened this week take you away from the enormous victory that happened this week, because it's the kind that you will feel forever, and you can rub it in their faces. This is the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll see you next week. This is something that we're just going to have a joy grinding on the Republicans on. And thanks everybody for listening at WCPT and on 820 AM and at WCPT820.com. That's their website. Tune it in. You can hear all your favorite liberal and progressive talkers on there.
Yeah.
They're there. Program it in. We'll see you next time. See you later, Johnny.
See you, Hal.